Okay, it's on or about 9:30 on Monday. This is the WPIAL Blitz Show podcast. My name's Bruce Badgley. Alongside me, as always, my good friend there, Ian McMeans. Ian, why don't you introduce our very special guest tonight?
Yes, we are honored to have two-time WPIAL head champion head coach TJ Plack from the Peters Township Indians joining us. Coach Plack has really turned that program around. It amazes me that Peters had never made a WPIAL championship game until 2019 and now has been to five in the last 7 years now. So Coach Plack, congratulations on winning your second title and welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. That was good to hear. Two-time WPIAL champion, coach. I think that is probably the first time I actually heard it out loud.
We
Appreciate
can
you
say
guys.
it a bunch more times if you want.
Oh, it's okay. We're good. We're past that. We're on to the next. On to the next.
So can you just kind of talk a little bit about the journey that you've been on and the program's been on since you took over that, it was a school that had kind of been in the middle of the pack traditionally, but hadn't, broken through that threshold of making it even to a championship game, let alone winning one. Then you
Right.
made it a couple times and then finally won one 2 years ago and now have won a second one.
Yeah, it's been a long process. I've been there 10 years. I was there before as an offensive coordinator under head coach Nick Milkovich, who still great friends with. I teach across the hall from him. Then he got let go, and I did my journey around the South Hills at Bethel Park, where I live. I spent some time with Jeff Matheny, which was absolutely fantastic. And I coached with Milkovich again at Ringgold for a couple of years, and then this job opened up, and we kind of got the band back together. A bunch of coaches that used to all be together, and I don't know. I've been asked this question a lot lately, and it's just like I think we hit lightning. We hit a small amount of we got a great group of kids that came in as freshmen, athletes. Our administration has been solid and very consistent, and very supportive, extremely supportive. We have some great coaches, and probably got lucky a couple times, and it just all seems to snowball. And we've been very consistent each and every year. It started out, we won our first conference championship, which was the second in school history. And then, then we won three in a row, and then we made it to the title game. Then we finally won one, lost again last year, and then won this one. So it's been a gradual build each and every year. So we're going to try to keep it at this level for as long as possible.
Hey, Coach, how great has it been, or how important has it been to be able to now draw on all this experience that you just talked about to be able to move on into the PIAA tournament now, a second time?
Well, it's great with this group of kids. We've been there. We've been in the Whipple Championship game. We've won. We've lost. We've made it to the state championship game against a really good Emotep team. So they have all those experiences over the last couple of years. But we have stories, and our kids on the team this year, they know the guys that graduated 5-6 years ago that didn't win, but they built the foundation of the program. And those guys are playing in college, and we have one in the pros, and so we have stories from them to build off of, and just learning experiences that our kids can relate to, because they all grew up in the same area. They've all played for the same parents in youth sports, had the same teachers, and now they all have the same coaches, which is pretty cool, especially at Peters Township. I'm not sure. I think I may be the longest tenured head coach at Peters Township. For the longest time. I mean, 10 years. Usually it's 4 years and you're out of there. So I'm very fortunate to have been there 10 years.
So let's talk a little bit about this championship game that happened on Saturday night that, you guys were down 19-0 at halftime and then just put the clamps on Pine Richland's offense. What was kind of the halftime message to your team? If you can share any of it, I don't want you to give away any secrets, but what did you tell them to kind of keep them focused? Because, we've seen Pine Richland many times this year just blow teams out of the water in the second half, but you guys turned the tables on them and came back and won the title.
Yeah, first and foremost, defensively, I thought our guys played really good football in the first half. The quarterback is hard to get your hands on him, and he ran around and he was able to extend their drives a little bit. They had a couple big plays. They really did. Offensively, we were no help. We did have some bad field position, but even when we did have good field position, we were unable to get a first down. So no, there was nothing special said at halftime. We have a senior-led team with a lot of really good leaders. It was quiet. I met with the offensive staff real quick. I walked into a dead silent locker room and I go, "Hey guys, there's no sugarcoat. We've done absolutely nothing right. We're getting our butts kicked up and down the field on offense. We're not going to feel sorry for each other, and we're going to get back on the horse and get back out there. It's up to you guys." And a couple guys said some things. There's no yelling or anything like that, and we met, and then we got back on the field, hoping to catch a little bit of momentum. And we finally did the end of the third quarter right there. And that momentum train just keeps going and going and going. And it was in our favor that second half. And man, that helped out a lot.
And you talked a little bit about your defense, but your defense has been outstanding this year. I mean, just the way you've been able to put the clamps on some really high-powered offenses, not just this week against Pine Richland, but in previous weeks against Upper St. Clair and Bethel Park, teams that were averaging close to or over 40 points a game. That you shut out Bethel Park in week 9. You kept Upper St. Clair out of the end zone in the semifinals. So can you talk a little bit about some of the key guys on your defense? Because it's obviously very easy to find stats for offensive players, but tracking down defensive stats is hard sometimes.
Yeah, no problem. No, our defensive coaches do a fantastic job. I think what we do is a little bit unique compared to others. It just fits who we are, the type of kid we get at Peters Township. They set those kids up as our coordinators say. They always give them the answers to the test up front. You know what I mean? They just got to watch film, and we'll have all the answers going out there on a Friday night. But defensively, I think it all starts for us. Our linebacking core is probably one of the best in the state. We've got 2 outside edge guys that are incredible ball players, Reston Lehman and Lucas Shanafelt. Our middle linebacker, who's first year starting as our Mike linebacker, but he played nose tackle last year. Our nose got injured. He was a backup linebacker, and he went in there and played nose for about 10 games, I believe. And James Spratt ended up with 22 tackles Saturday night, which was absolutely incredible. He crazy dog out there. He was awesome. We got a couple undersized guys up front. Gabe Keita has had a great year for us, number 50. If you saw him, you wouldn't think much of him. He's probably about 5, I'm being polite, 5'10", 175 pounds. But he is strong and fast, and he does a great job up front with a couple of our other guys. And then honestly, our back end, we have 3 safety system. In our corners, they can all cover and they can all tackle. Sometimes you get a couple corners that are really good cover guys that just don't come up in the run game. All 5 of our guys can cover, and all 5 are asked to tackle. So our coaches do a great job, but honestly, just like any good team, we're blessed with some really good talent over there.
Yeah, Coach, you get into these situations, obviously, that you're in now. I mean, these, win or go home. I mean, season ending type of situations. You're obviously going into these games with a specific plan in mind. But, you're doing these things on, evaluations of film and, scouting reports. How often or how long do you stay with a plan and hope that plan comes to fruition when it may not work the way that you thought it might coming out of the blocks? How long do you stick with a game plan before, hey, we got to make some changes and make them now?
Saturday we stuck with it the whole game. It may have looked a little bit different. We may have but honestly, our first half offensively, we just had a bunch of missed assignments. And they played good. All credit to Pine Richland. They do a great job. We knew it was going to be an uphill battle, but we wanted to run the ball. We weren't that great at running the ball, but I think with our defense, we still need to continue to run it and hopefully break a few, which we did. Our run game went, maybe plan A didn't work, like how we were going to run it. Maybe plan B didn't work either, but dang it, plan C actually worked. So We were consistent with that. We stayed with it. And you know, I think you have to. I think I mean, you might change up a little bit like we did. We kind of ran a couple different other plays from some different sets that probably give us a little bit of an advantage. But yes, you just can't second guess yourself. You go in with a plan. You take a week or two to develop that, and I think you stay with it as long as possible.
And speaking of your running game, I mean, Cole Newpaver coming in and just stepping in as a first-year starter into the running back role, and obviously a lot of it starts up front in the trenches. So I'll let you talk about your defense, but we're big believers in trying to give shout-outs to the offensive line too. So if you want to talk a little bit about the guys up in the trenches, that's absolutely fine with us.
Yeah, sure. I think it all starts with our center, Alex Klein. Funny story about him. Um, his sophomore year, he was a scout team center, and that's the year we went to the state championship. We had a pretty nice line that year, and I remember our defense coordinator watched film. It was like week 2 of the season. He's like, "Who the heck is that center? Get him off scout team. He's terrible. He's not giving us a good look." I'm like, "Come on!" I mean, he's going up against a really good nose tackle every day, like 80 plays at practice, and that week our center goes down with a knee injury.
Oh,
And so Alex, as a sophomore, who is frowned upon from our defense coordinator at that time, goes in and starts the rest of the games. He did not start the state championship because our center that got hurt, he goes the next week, he goes, "Coach, it's all good. I had surgery. They said I could be back for a state championship game if we make there." I go, "Okay." Yeah, we're gonna make it the state championship game. And he was back, and he came back the state semifinal game, and he played guard for us. And I gave him the start against Emotep at center. But Alex Klein's been a 3-year starter for us. Again, a little undersized kid. He is not going on to play college football. He wants to be a doctor. He plays volleyball. Intelligent young man, great young man. I think it all starts with him. We have another center, another senior. Our only other senior is Cortez, one of our bigger guys. And man, those two guys, they don't play any defense. They get done with offensive practice and they go sit on the bench. And they're like the odd couple. He's a real big guy. Our center's a little bit smaller, but just two really good seniors to have out there. We've got a bunch of juniors who I think are really good football players. 2 have been injured. 1 came back last Saturday night. But we have a kid, Gavin Hollander, plays tackle for us. It's only his 2nd year playing football. He is a nice-sized kid. He's got a lot of upside to him. Cole Camilletti has been out for the last couple of weeks. He's got a chance of returning this week, hopefully. If not, if we're fortunate enough to win the following week. And Brady O'Connor has been a 2-year starter for us as well. So, we have 3 juniors up front that we really, really like, with those 2, the odd couple, 2 seniors.
yeah, it's just so special when you hear coaches like yourself, kind of take us behind the curtain a little bit to all of the stories and all of the great times that you have with these young men. And it's got to be so special for you to be able to relive this, and like I said, these are times that are going to last forever with you and these young men. How special is that for you to be a part of that with these young men in these just unbelievable games?
It's awesome. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you. There's some times where I'm driving home and I think about some of these times and I tear up, you know what I mean? Because it is special. It's you put your heart into it. I know they put their heart into it. And when you're having success and you see a community of people behind you, just they love it. You're making their life special. They're making our life special. So it is sports are great. Sports are great. I mean, let's admit that. I mean, it just takes you somewhere else out of your real life and it just puts you in a place that has so much promise to it. And no, it's it's awesome. And I think that's why we get tired as coaches, as players. I mean, these kids they're taking classes I've never even heard about. I didn't take these classes and they're with us, and then they're at practice with us for like 4 hours, and then they have to go home and get these labs done and
They're
study.
still real people. I mean,
They're
with
still
real
real people.
lives.
Yeah, and then like we all got to go home, take care of our families. Like it's exhausting. And right now it's really exhausting for everybody. And everybody still likes each other right now. You know what I mean? Like it's like we see each other every single day. We all still like each other. It is special. It is special. And they'll all be missed. And we do a good job of keeping touch in the off season. And our alumni, the guys have been playing with us for the last 10 years, they communicate well with our coaching staff. It's there's some good relationships there.
Wow. All right, Ian, final question for Coach.
I was actually just going to ask about like the community support and rallying behind the team, but you kind of answered that. So I think, I'll just say congratulations on winning your second WPIAL title, and best of luck in the state playoffs, and enjoy the ride, right? Whatever happens from here, have fun, enjoy it. Hope you all bring back a state title to the South Hills. I would love to see it. Went to the parade a couple years ago when Mount Lebanon won, and that was just awesome seeing them carry the trophy down Washington Road. So hopefully you guys are able to bring one back, but best of luck this week and everything moving forward with your program.
That's awesome. Hey, I thank you guys so much for having me on. I absolutely enjoyed it.
Well, thanks a lot, Coach. And just go ahead and exit out, and Ian and I will continue on with the show there. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay. Wow. Really got emotional there. You could really feel the emotion.
Yeah.
It just coming out of the screen almost, on what this means. And that's why, it's tough to ask those questions, but it just shows the fact that we're all human, and people have to understand that we're still real people. And my gosh, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat is so real this time of year, isn't it?
It really is. And this is one of those watershed moments in the season where like winning a WPIAL championship has always been one of the pinnacle accomplishments in Western Pennsylvania. And I felt for a long time like winning a WPIAL title was seen as more prestigious than even winning a state title in Western Pennsylvania. And I think part of it is because, we talk about history all the time on this show, that the WPIAL title's been around since like 1913, 1914.
Right, it's been around a lot longer than the PIAA.
Right, which started in like the late 80s, so 88. So, I think that, for so long, like winning a WPIAL title was the culmination of your season. And so many people grew up in this atmosphere of thinking, winning a WPIAL title is the cherry on top of a whole season. And now, that we have the state tournament for since 1988, but still relatively recently, I guess, the last almost 40 years, that, there's more to come. But this is one of those moments where you kind of can take a step back like Coach Plack did and say, wow, look at what we've accomplished, right? And just the gamut to run through to win a WPIAL championship is incredibly difficult, right? Like this isn't one of those districts around the state that has like 4 teams in the district, right? Like Peters Township had to run through a gauntlet of teams to get here, to get to this point. And even their non-conference schedule, they played a bunch of 6A opponents in the South Hills. So they've played a very tough schedule. They're tough, they're battle tested. And I think one thing that's always stood out to me about Coach Plack's players and the way his players play is they're tough, they're gritty, and they play for each other, right? They play with a ton of heart. They're never going to give up. And, you can just see that passion out there on the field, that they're playing for their community, but they're also playing for each other.
Yeah. And look, thanks for all the fans that have, got in on the chat. We really, that's a lot of the reason why, we wait till 9:30 on Mondays, because we want to have our fans have the ability to get in and comment live and everything. So, hey, listen, Ryan Briggs is here. So why don't we get started with him, Ian? Okay.
All right. We'll bring the professor on.
So Ryan should be coming in a minute, and there he is.
All right, we've got the professor, Ryan Briggs, from.
Looks like it sounds like he was watching the show.
I was, yes. Had to kind of get see where you guys were and stuff with Coach Plack, but congratulations to him.
Of course, one of his players back at South Fayette about 2 decades ago, Andrew DiDonato, is a good friend of mine, a colleague of mine at work. So kind of a small world here in Western Pennsylvania, even though separated by whatever 70-75 miles.
Nice. Well,
thanks for joining, Ryan.
Yes.
For first.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. We really appreciate the invite. Glad to talk a few minutes about some of the opponents that the teams you cover will be facing this weekend.
Yes. So from what I've gathered from following both you and Bob Greenberg on Twitter, this is a kind of historic moment for the Mercer County teams where both Farrell and Greenville are now in the state semifinals together, and both of them facing WPIAL opponents, Farrell in 2A facing Seton LaSalle and Greenville in 1A facing Clairton.
Yes, Mercer County's had a lot of success over the years, certainly at the state playoff level and state championship level. Farrell has, of course, been a regular on the state playoffs the last several years, winning a couple of state titles in 1A in the last decade, and they've certainly been a fixture. They lost in the first round of 2A last year to Central Clarion, but Farrell as a team, Farrell, I think, expected to be here. A lot of people expected Farrell to be here. On the other side with Greenville, they're the surprise. First time since 1999 that Greenville's been in the state playoffs. The last time Greenville was in the state playoffs was in Class AAA in the old 4-class setting. So of course, the enrollment's gotten smaller and so forth. But Greenville's had a terrific season. Avenged a Week 1 loss to Wilmington in the District 10 title game. They've had a really fun playoff run. The community is fired up about it. Greenville, a great athletic tradition, a great football tradition there, certainly going back way back to the World War II days with legendary coach Ed Snyder all the way through. And now to see them in the state semifinals for the third time in school history is really exciting. And they and Clairton, very intriguing matchup Friday night at Elwood City's Helling Stadium.
Yeah, so both games are actually at Helling Stadium. One's Friday night and then one Saturday afternoon. So you just get the double dip of Elwood City. So Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about? We'll start with the Clairton Greenville matchup. We've seen Clairton all year, dominant defense, an offense that can spread you out, throw the ball all over the yard, but can also kind of run a bit of old school wing tee and just smash mouth football pounded at you. So what can we expect to see from Greenville on the other side?
I think the first part that you mentioned there with one of the first parts, Clairton, the passing game, I think that's going to be the real test. Greenville has not faced a passing attack like Clairton has, the ability to to be so productive. Certainly some of the teams they've played have thrown the ball and so forth, but I think Clairton will be the toughest passing game. Now, they've certainly faced some very good rushing attacks. Wilmington in the District 10 championship game, they run an old style wing tee. And then last week against Port Allegheny, of course, Port Allegheny was the state runner-up last year, had a lot back. I think a lot of people thought it was maybe a formality for Port Allegheny to get by that game. And of course, Port Allegheny really took it to Fort Cherry last year. So Greenville didn't exactly shut down Port Allegheny, but they slowed them down enough and won 36-28. But the Greenville, like Clairton, they can throw it, they can run it. Quarterback Cale Thurber, first year as a starter at quarterback. He played receiver last year and defensive back. They can run kind of an old style wing tee with their two halfbacks, Rudy Gentili and Casey Materia, who both have had really good years. They have a receiver on the outside of junior Justin Shell, over 1,000 yards for the second straight year. And they really can go to a spread package with 4 legitimate receiving threats, or stay in their tight end, 1 receiver, 3 backs, some unbalanced lines, so forth. Sometimes maybe some older fans will remember the old Greenville toss power. It's just the quarterback's main job was as a lead blocker, turn, reverse pivot, pitch it, and run through the hole. That was what they ran a lot back in the 90s under Bob Stone. They had some great battles with Joe Hamilton's and Blackhawk teams twice in the mid-90s, with Blackhawk prevailing both times, but those were both tight games. So it's a Greenville offense that can present some that can do a thing, can do a lot, and they have the personnel to do so. Pretty veteran offensive and defensive line. Defensively, a couple guys up front, Horatio Calvin, Cam Reimold, have really stepped forward, leading the front 4, and they do have some good athletes in the back end. Shell, Thurber, Kyle McGirt, strong safety, is the leading tackler this year. He was a guy that wasn't a starter in Week 1. But because of some personnel, they had to move some guys around. He stepped in and became their leading tackler. He's made a lot of big plays this year. Solid return game, solid kicking game. And I think too, also there's that they have a little bit of that it factor, if you will, of just okay. So in the semifinals, won't bore people with too many details, but they played Reynolds in the district semifinals. Reynolds and Greenville, long rivalry going back to the late '60s. In fact, the Reynolds High School building is in the Greenville zip code. So that's how close they are.
Wow.
But they didn't play in the regular season. They were in different regions, different conferences, if you will, and they hadn't played in a handful of years. That's another long story. But anyway, so all of a sudden now they're playing in this in this playoff game, and Greenville won. It was a hard fought game, 27-14. But it seemed like that just really kind of was a real springboard for them. The next week against Wilmington, a team that had won at Greenville 21-7 in the opener. Greenville's down in the fourth quarter, 22-19, driving, 4 minutes to go, fourth quarter. We have a lightning delay. How often do you have a lightning delay in mid-November in Western Pennsylvania in a night game? I mean, it's practically unheard of. But so yeah, about a 45-minute delay. They come out 4th and 16. They hit a 23-yard pass to Hunter Cox, who probably on that play was the fourth option. They get it goal to go. Rudy Gentili scores, and then they get a stop, and they win 25-22. And then last week, a goal line stand stopping Port Allegheny's Aiden Bliss at the 1, a guy that's rushed for over 7,000 yards in his career. So they've had the I guess maybe a little bit of a charmed run here, but they've played. But it's more so they've played good football, and they've taken care of the ball. They've been able to run the ball, throw the ball, get enough stops defensively. But certainly a very stiff test this week against a Clarion team that Clareton, that has put up a lot of points, but also showed against Laurel the other day that Clareton can win ugly as well, an 8-6 game. And I think that was maybe one of the questions that people thought, well, what happens if Clareton kind of gets bogged down in a game like that? Well, they showed they can win that. They showed they can beat Jeanette in that shootout 38-33. And of course, a lot of zeros on the scoreboard in the regular season. So Greenville certainly will have its work cut out for them, but the Trojans are a confident team, and they're playing good football. And I expect it to be a very intriguing matchup Friday night at Elwood City.
Yeah,
and
something. Oh,
go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I was just going to say something else that stood out to me from what you said is that this Greenville team is battle tested. They've been in a lot of close games, and they know how to execute in crunch time to get it done.
Yeah, especially in the postseason. Regular season, they really weren't tested. They were in a conference that was not particularly strong this year. Some teams, just some some programs that have been good that were young. Some other programs that maybe have had their struggles. And then the non-conference teams that they played a couple teams that, for example, Sharpsville, who's been good for the last 25 years, they had a down year this year. So they going into the playoffs, you wondered how they handle the close games. Well, they've passed those tests with flying colors. The last two games, certainly against Wilmington and Port Allegany, who played in last year's state quarterfinals. Wilmington had almost everybody back. Port Allegany had a lot back. So for Greenville to defeat those two teams in successive weeks without having extensive postseason experience is really, I think, says a lot for them and the level that they've played at here in November.
Yeah, and we touched on the fact that these games are being played, in Elwood City, a WPIAL town. And maybe you can educate me. Sometimes, at least out east here, that when there's typical matchups between certain districts, it rotates around where one year it's played, let's just say in District 1, the next year it would be played in District 11 when those, champs play. Is that the case here too, that each particular year sometimes it's played down in District 7, other times these games are up in District 9 and 10?
Yeah, I think a lot of times they may try to do that, or they go geographically. For example, last Friday, Sharon from District 10 played Penn Cambria from District 6. They played at Clarion University, which is District 9. I think in this case, yes, Elwood City would be a District 7 site, but I haven't got my road atlas or Google out, but Greenville is probably a little bit closer to Elwood City than is Clairton. So
okay.
I know that they had some troubles finding sites being Thanksgiving weekend. Schools are closed, etc. But I think as far as if you're looking for a geographically geographical midpoint, they did about as well as they could. So yes, it's a District 7 site, but it's probably a little bit closer for Greenville to get there. So I think all in all, I think it's a great site. But yeah, I think they do try to. And sometimes in both of these matchups too, because you have, I know St. LaSalle's in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, a little closer to the city than is Clairton, which is down in the Mon Valley, and Farrell's a bit south of Greenville, but kind of two teams on the north, two teams from the south of Pittsburgh area. So it worked out, which sometimes it doesn't work out, where you get some unusual locations. But I think that the way it shook out is I think it's beneficial to all involved, both teams, fans, media, etc. I think it's a good location, and I know the Elwood City folks are excited to have these games Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah, and I think Elwood City did a stadium renovation a few years ago, so it's nice that this is able to pay off and they're able to bring some high-profile matchups. And speaking of high-profile matchups, for a 2A state semifinal game, I was really kind of amazed at just how much like D1 talent is going to be on the field between Seton LaSalle and Farrell in this one on Saturday afternoon.
Yes, certainly. I know Seton LaSalle obviously has put together a great season. I think 12 straight wins. They lost in the opener to North Catholic, who had a very fine season in 3A, and then Farrell, a rugged non-conference schedule this year. Of course, with Farrell, the name that jumps out first is Jules Johnson, running back and strong safety. He's a Nebraska commit. He certainly is a guy that I think is going to be in the mix for like a Class 2A State Player of the Year. I'm not saying that he will get it, but I think he's a worthy candidate, certainly. Over 2,000 yards rushing. He might even be better as a defensive back. He's a tremendous kick returner. So yeah, Farrell, he certainly is the headline guy, but a lot of other guys for Farrell. The quarterback, Aaron Pegues, his dad, Anthony, is the head coach at Farrell. He was the quarterback for Farrell on the first state title team at Farrell back in 1995. Aaron throws the ball a little bit more than his dad got to back then, but he is a proof that 1 year older doesn't necessarily mean you're 1 year better. He put in the work. The weight room and all the strength and conditioning, and he last year, he was as a sophomore, he looked like a sophomore out there. This year he looks like a grown man on the field, and he's played like a grown man, throwing and running. He's had a terrific season. They have a fleet of receivers and a really, I think, underrated offensive and defensive line. Has a good mix of sophomores and some older guys. The secondary, they have Dorian Kane, Damar Kane. They are twin brothers. Jaden King Vincent, dynamic returner. Farrell has a lot of guys who can do a lot of things in all three facets of the game, and they certainly will have a stiff test Saturday afternoon with Seton LaSalle. Farrell, I think, is prepared for this from a schedule standpoint. They played Sharon, played Hickory, who were the District 10 finalists in 3A. Sharon played last week in the 3A state quarterfinals. Played Steubenville, Ohio. For those that don't know, Steubenville in the playoffs is kind of like Thomas Jefferson, Aliquippa.
Yeah, they are.
You expect them to be playing this time of year. Steubenville was a state quarterfinalist in Division III in Ohio, which would be about the equivalent of 4A in Pennsylvania. They also played Fort LaBeouf, Cathedral Prep from Erie. So they've been battle tested from their non-conference schedule, and then
didn't they beat Cathedral Prep
so far in the state playoffs? They went to Karns City, a very good team, forced 5 turnovers and won that one 48-20. And then last week defeating the District 6 champion Richland 32-14. And Richland, a team that presented a lot of challenges too. So Farrell's playing well, but Farrell's going to have to continue to do that against the Seton LaSalle team, which of course is on a roll as well.
And Bruce, you asked if Farrell beat Cathedral Prep.
Yes, they did. That was a Week 10
That's what
game.
I thought. That's what I thought. That's what opened my eyes to this team when they beat Cathedral Prep. I'm going like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, no. This was not the greatest Cathedral Prep team in their history. They had some injuries. They were a little bit down, but Farrell mercy ruled them. And that was a Week 10 game. Farrell got on them early, and it was, if it had been a boxing match, they'd have stopped it.
That was the say what game for me in Pennsylvania when they say what? I mean, Farrell beating Cathedral Prep.
It was a game that Prep had. It wasn't a case where Prep was playing out the string. If Prep had won, Prep would have gone to the sub-regional in Class 5A. They have the point system and so forth. So Prep had a lot to play for, and Farrell just came out. And really, from a Farrell standpoint, they were going to be the number 1 seed in the 4-team 2A tournament in D10, but they played like a team whose season was on the line that night, and I think that win, and then what they had 2 good wins in the district tournament. A little bit of a slow start against Mercyhurst Prep in the title game. It was 16-0 at the half, and they were able to kick it in the gear in the second. Mercyhurst is a team I think was better than their overall record indicated. But then the 2 wins at Karn City, then over Richland last week in the fog down at Armstrong. The Steelers are playing well, and they certainly will be a formidable opponent for Seton LaSalle. But I look at that the Rebels' schedule this year, and and the numbers and everything. It's very eye-popping to say the least, and what they've done over the last 2.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think for Seton too, having followed them, they're a team that has kind of gone through a little bit of a transition this year too, that their starting quarterback now, Kia Jones, wasn't the starter at the beginning of the season. They kind of worked him in as the season went on, and then he took over that role, toward the latter third of the regular season and then through the playoffs. And they have a really good running back in Kamar Freeman, but Seton's 2 defensive ends, Will Martin and Aaron Loritz, are both D1 commits. One's going to Duquesne and one's going to Monmouth. So, and they'll use them offensively kind of in spot roles too. Last week in the WPIAL championship game, Will Martin stepped in as kind of a wildcat back, I guess, and ran in 3 touchdowns. So, it's a Seton team that they've got some youth, both Jones and Freeman are sophomores, but they also have some experience, as Martin and Loritz are both seniors. So they've got a good mix and some talent. So I think you're right. I think it should be a really good matchup. One more question before we let you go. Definitely want to be respectful of your time, but you guys also
I have all night, so
okay. So you guys also covered Sharon, and they lost to Penn Cambria in the 3A quarterfinals last week, and now Penn Cambria goes on to play Avonworth for the second year in a row. So can you tell us anything about kind of what we can expect from Penn Cambria, having seen them last week against Sharon?
Sure, yeah. Penn Cambria, it was the game was scoreless late in the first half. Penn Cambria gets a touchdown, goes up 6-0, and then on the next play, the next offensive play, Sharon tries a screen pass. Colin Gongoloff, a defensive lineman for Penn Cambria, intercepts it. The quarterback hits him, he fumbles, but then it's picked up by the cornerback, Evan Latner, excuse me. He takes it in about 15 yards for a touchdown to make it 12-0. Sharon scored late third quarter to make it 12-7, but it was a 12-7 victory for Penn Cambria. They're a very, very solid team. Quarterback Brady Jones, who he can run and throw. Their running back, Corbin Vinglish, he's a tank. He's about 5'10". They list him at 215. I guess he's probably about 230 maybe. He's put together. And then they have a good fleet of receivers. Blake Lilly, who Sharon did a really nice job on. He had 2 catches for -1 yard last week. 59 catches this year. They're pretty big and strong up front. The Sharon coach, Jason McElhaney, he had a very, I think, appropriate adjective for them. He said they're thick. I mean, and they guys have been in the weight room. They're a very physical team, very tough. The line's led by Dane Somerville, a very good heavyweight wrestler also. But I know that I don't think you're going to hold Avonworth to 7 points. I've known Coach Johncore for a long time. He was my 9th grade Algebra 2 teacher many years ago.
Wow.
I saw him probably about a month ago. As my straight job is at Grove City College, and his son Austin plays basketball at Grove City, and I saw Coach, and he says we have a good team this year, and he was probably understating it a bit, but again, there is the familiarity. They played last year. Penn Cambria they're a very physical team, very tough team, and a team that has generally not beaten itself this year. So if they can stick to that recipe, and if Avonworth, a turnover or two, Antelopes could find themselves, in a battle. Penn Cambria is a very good team, but I don't know that they are Avonworth class. I mean, this Avonworth team is humming, to say the least. But that's certainly one to keep an eye on. Penn Cambria is good enough to get them if Avonworth is not on point Friday night at Indiana.
Yeah, and that was a 16-6 game last year when they played. So it was pretty close, low scoring. Yeah. I think my impression of Penn Cambria was they were, strong and physical and tough in the trenches, and had a pretty stout defense. So I think what you said about the Sharon game kind of backs that up again for this year too.
Yes, certainly. And Sharon had a dynamic team, and Penn Cambria was able to bottle them up. Terry and White, who ran over for over 1,500 yards. I believe he finished with about 100 yards, but they didn't give up the big play. And they made make Sharon drive the field, and that's what we'll have to do against Avonworth is make Avonworth drive the field. If you have a 10-play, 12-play drive, maybe you get a dropped pass, a holding penalty, something of that sort, where it puts them in a situation where they may have to punt or have to turn it over on down. So I think Penn Cambria has a formula that's not really deviating from what they like to do. They're going to have to really do it well against Avonworth. But that's a game, certainly. If there's somebody out there just wondering what's a game that I want to watch a game or follow a game, I certainly think that is one. Not taking anything away from the game that I'll have Friday night, Greenville Clareton, but Penn Cambria and Avonworth, I think, is one that certainly a lot of eyes should be on coming up Friday night.
Yeah, and that could very easily turn into a defensive struggle again. Avonworth's first team defense hasn't given up more than 10 points to any team this year. The couple games that they gave up more than 10, they were all, with the backups in, with the running clock and all that. So, two very stout defensive teams, it sounds like, in the 3A semis.
Yeah, and of course, having my connection with Coach John Core, fun to see how Avonworth is doing. And we actually a few years ago they opened with Grove City each of the first two, or in week one in a 2-year cycle, and that was we broadcast that game, which of course Coach John Core, one of his early stops was as an assistant coach at Grove City back in the mid-90s. So there was that little bit of an angle to it, and there was also the fact too, there always potentially that could have been a state playoff preview, worked out that it wasn't, but because Grove City was 3A2 and had some really good teams too. But it's really what the Avonworth program, what they've done the last several years now, has been very, very impressive, and I think they have a great shot of going back to Cumberland Valley next week for that championship game next Saturday. But Penn Cambria is a formidable obstacle.
All right, Ryan, I'll tell you what, my head's spinning with all the facts that you went through here over the last, few minutes here. But listen, man, thanks so much. I tell you what, people watching your game are definitely going to get all of the insight that they'll ever need, man. Listen, thanks for joining us tonight, and have fun over the weekend, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Thank you for the opportunity. This was a lot of fun. I always enjoy getting to talk about our local teams up this way, and what should be two really exciting games this weekend against two of the premier programs in Southwest Pennsylvania.
And just
thanks a lot, Ryan.
One other quick thing before you go, if you want to plug your website, social media stuff, so people know where to find you.
Sure. Yeah, I have the tag here, NWPA Sports. It also goes to ProfessorBriggs.com. I have Mercer County stats there. Also, all-time some historical stuff, Mercer County football, all-time results going back to pre-World War I in some cases with some schools. Awesome. There's kind of a there's kind of a menagerie of some other things there, but you can check that out there. I'm on Twitter, or X now, Professor Briggs on there, and yes, you get some high school stuff, and who knows, maybe some old pro wrestling things get retweeted, or occasional other oddball stuff. But you guys do a great job, and I'm thankful to get to spend a little bit of time with you guys tonight. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to everybody who's tuned in tonight. What a great time of year! Football, food, family, friends, and it's a great time of year. And thank you for the opportunity tonight.
All right, Ryan. Thanks a lot. Just go ahead and exit out, and Ian and I will continue on.
Sounds great. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, Ian.
See ya.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, there we go. Okay, wow, I'll tell you, man. And it looked like he just had everything memorized too.
Yeah, yeah. It's awesome talking to these guys who, broadcast other districts, because I follow some people on Twitter, but sometimes it's hard to find, good stats and good info. And between Bob Greenberg and Professor Briggs, the two of them cover Mercer County, as well as I've seen anyone cover any, county and district outside of the WPIAL. Obviously, I'm a little biased towards my WPIAL guys, but those guys do a great job. And, it makes it easy for people like me and us on the show, right? Because we've kind of been talking about Farrell all year that makes it kind of easy to say, okay, who's coming, who we looking at in the state playoffs maybe. And following those guys on social media definitely makes it easier. They do an awesome job, and they have radio broadcasts of games and things like that. So that's great to get that insight on, some of the coming opponents for both Seton LaSalle and Clairton here in both games at Elwood City. So if someone wants to pull the double dip and go to Elwood City twice, I guess they could.
Yeah. And, the one thing that comes across that doesn't come across on like Twitter is that the passion that Ryan has for high school sports. I mean, you just have to love the fact that he's so passionate about it, and providing all of this great information to the fans that follow those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So
all right,
want to get rolling?
Yeah, right. Let's roll, baby.
All right, here we go. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the WPIAL Blitz show. You've obviously found us on YouTube. You can find us on social media and at steelcityblitz.com. I won't have any preview articles this week. I wrapped them all up with my WPIAL championship previews last week, but I will have, in the coming weeks sometime, some look aheads at how some of the classifications and conferences may break down next year, because it is a realignment year. So that's definitely something on my radar as well. So you can look for that on steelcityblitz.com, and it'll be posted on all our social stuff as well. So let's talk about the WPIAL championship games. And the message I have this year is that defense wins championships. So if you look down the list, all 12 teams that played in WPIAL championship games this year ranked in the top 3 in their respective classifications in defense. So, it's really easy to talk about offense and how many points are scored and all that, and, which players are putting up numbers. But at the end of the day, the old adage is still true that defense wins championships. And the teams that were able to come up with some key defensive stops were the ones that were able to, win championships. And I think the other thing that stood out to me was, as I was looking at the scores, a lot of them were low scoring games, but I was like, well, these are the top defensive units in their respective classifications. So it makes sense that it was a defensive struggle.
Yeah. And the other thing too is related to even the coaching on the defensive side of the ball. It's just been so stellar this year. I think so much of high school defense is, game planning, and, what positions these coaches are going to put the guys in, because they don't have a lot of opportunity to really, change that once the game starts. It's more of get them in the right spot and have them react, with the players. And that's why I think so much of this defense is reliant on the coaches just doing an outstanding job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say also from a historical standpoint, we had some, historic results at both ends of the spectrum. You had Aliquippa and Clairton extending their leads at the top for a number of championships won, and then Peters Township winning their second championship ever, Avonworth their 4th ever, Seton LaSalle, it was their 6th, but the first one since 2004. So, there was some of the usual suspects here, but also some of them hadn't done it in a while. That Clairton hadn't won since 2019, which for Clairton is quite a while.
Yeah, it really is. And I think we'll get into that, but I think that there were a lot of milestones that were set, and I'll just kind of wait for the ones that I'll go through until we go through some of the other slides.
Well, that's a good segue into our 1A championship game between Clairton and Laurel. It was a defensive struggle for the whole game. Clairton hit a touchdown pass to Brandon Murphy at the end of the first half, went up 8-0 on a 2-point conversion. And then late in the game, Laurel drove it down the field and scored, but was not able to convert their 2-point conversion attempt. So at the end of the day, it was Clairton's defense that sealed the deal and won them their first WPIAL title since 2019. And so congratulations to the Bears getting back on top. And I don't know what that string of numbers is there. That's a typo in my slide. But nevertheless, Clairton's ground game, we talked about that kind of wing T formation with the 3 backs that they could run out of the backfield. And they went to that a lot in this one. It was an early game, an 11 a.m. kickoff. and it wasn't super sloppy. There weren't a ton of penalties. There were a couple punts, but a lot of it was like a team would pick up a couple first downs and then not convert on fourth down, and then the other team would pick up a first down and not convert on fourth down. They just kind of traded field position for quite a while until Clairton was able to connect on that touchdown pass. They did have another touchdown pass that was called back on a offensive pass interference penalty as well. So, Clairton, very worthy champions this year after the incredible defensive season they had. So congratulations to the Bears. And we already talked about that Greenville-Port Allegheny game with Ryan Briggs and kind of how that one ended with Greenville's defense stopping Aiden Bliss at the goal line at the death, basically with 1 second left. And then I think the surprise game to me was Bishop Guilfoyle and Westinghouse being so close, because Guilfoyle blew out Westinghouse last year. And that was another one that came down to the extra point.
Special teams.
Yeah, special teams. Yep.
I mean, the great equalizer, special teams. I think that there's so much emphasis put on, game planning related to, offense and defense. I tell you what, special teams play and lack thereof. I mean, it affected Pine Richland too. So, just 7-6 and 8-6 there, just so excruciating. Razor thin margins here in the postseason. And you know what? A lot of it has to do with special teams.
Yes, it absolutely does. And then the one I wasn't surprised by, but maybe other people were, and that's because my WPIAL Blitz rankings had Belmont Charter very highly ranked all year. Belmont just took it to Lackawanna Trail. It seemed like every time Lackawanna Trail scored to start to get it close, Belmont would score again and just kept spacing the lead further out, and were able to seal the deal. So we got a very good preview of this Clairton-Greenville game from Ryan Briggs, who we just talked to. I'll talk a little bit about some of the Clairton guys. Jeff Thompson, the quarterback's thrown for over 2,200 yards. Brandon Murphy, their sophomore linebacker receiver, has a ton of D1 offers already on defense. He's put up 11 total touchdowns, a couple of them on defense, a couple of them on the ground, has over 600 receiving yards, also some receiving touchdowns. And then the three guys in the backfield, kind of out of that wing T, Dante Wright, Dion Lovelace Pompey, and Michael Ruffin, who I didn't even have room for on this, they've all done quite a bit as both rushers and receivers, and they're kind of all those dual threats coming out of the backfield. So Clairton can spread you out, but Clairton can also pack it in tight, but run pass plays out of it and throw to a bunch of different guys. And I think, this is Clairton's first time being at this level since 2019. They haven't been to a state title game since 2016, which is hard to believe. It's been that long. Greenville's never been to a state title game. This is as Professor Briggs said, their first time since 1999 being in the semifinals. So, there's a lot to play for both teams here. Statistically, Clairton looks like they have a little bit of an advantage both on defense and offense. But when you get into these games, you just never know how the two teams are going to stack up against each other. And it all comes down to the matchups on the field. But the one thing I can say is Clairton definitely has the athletes all over the field that if Greenville isn't able to slow them down, Clairton could just run all over them.
And I think this is the game shock game. I don't think that Greenville's really played a team, of the caliber of Clairton and the athletes too. It's one thing to see these guys on film. It's another thing to see them when they're out in the field, juking you and running for a touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing worth noting for both of these 1A and 2A games is that I mentioned Elwood City did the field renovation, so it is a turf field they'll be playing on. So the track will be a little faster than if it was a grass field like Clairton played on last week at Acrisure Stadium.
Well, at least they got to play at 11 a.m. before it all got tore up.
That's true. Although we talked with James Dodson from the Lawrence County Sports Network about this last week, that sometimes playing early, it's a disadvantage for both teams, but it's just a weird time to start because you never start a game ever other than this one championship game at 11 a.m.
Yeah, and that's right, and that's the thing too is, I guess the gigantic reward of being able to play in Three Rivers Stadium or Acrisure means so much that teams will sacrifice that. But I do believe that that's a disservice to those teams to say, all right, well, we got 4 games that we've got to play here, so this one's got to start, early. It's a little bit tough, but hey, it is what it is. I don't think that any of the teams participating really care. They just want to play the game at Acrisure Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. And the single A 1A game has been at 11 a.m. pretty much forever. So it's not like this is a new thing that happened. It's just, it's a weird time to start a game.
Yep.
All right. So looking at the statewide playoff brackets here, we've talked about Clairton taking on Greenville. Clairton in their 11th semifinal. Those 4 state championships in a row with the Killer Tees team of Tyler Boyd, Tarish Webb, and Titus Howard. And they are 7-3 at this point, in the playoffs all time. And the other, Bishop Guilfoyle, kind of the powerhouse of being the defending champions. They've won a lot at this level and were forced up to 2A for a few years based on the success formula, came back to 1A, won it all last year. But this Belmont Charter team kind of is an upstart. You don't really know what to think of them. So I'm
Sure.
very interested to see how this Guilfoyle and Belmont game plays out.
Well, it's still the same coaching staff at Guilfoyle through all these championships. That's the constant. And I think that means so much. The experience level, having been to this particular point, and getting a team ready to play with Thanksgiving in between there. I mean, there's a lot of distraction, and I think the experience of Guilfoyle and that coaching staff is going to mean a lot in this situation.
Yeah, and it is interesting with Thanksgiving, now that you mention it, that usually this weekend with Thanksgiving is the state quarterfinals and not the state championship or state semifinals. Because usually you've got the WPIAL championships on the day after Thanksgiving at Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium. So the calendar fell a little bit differently, and that goes all the way back to how early they started in August this year. So it's interesting that they're now in the semifinals and it's Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll wrap up before December 7th. So before the first week of December is over, we'll have our state champions.
Well, and the other thing too is that the PIAA is playing a lot more games on Saturday. And I think that's beneficial. For I think, and it's smart if you've got Thanksgiving in between there, that at least you're giving the teams that practice on Thanksgiving is more ceremonial rather than substantive. And we're meeting, we're getting together, happy Thanksgiving, and we're going, and that. So yeah, I like it. I mean, I think that that putting more games on Saturday is enormously beneficial here too.
Yeah, and I think it probably helps from a travel standpoint too, that you're not having to figure out the morning after Thanksgiving how you're going to pack everything up and go travel somewhere for a high school football game. Giving that extra day does help a little.
Yeah, it does.
So let's talk 2A, where Seton LaSalle got revenge for their loss in the title game last year, winning the championship by actually the same score they lost it by last year, 21-14. Steel Valley scored 2 touchdowns in the first minute of the second half. It was a 0-0 game at halftime. Steel Valley returned the opening kickoff of the second half for a touchdown, and then Seton LaSalle fumbled on their first play, and Steel Valley got a short field and was able to run in a touchdown and go up 14-0. But Seton stuck with it with their ground game, was able to march the ball down the field. And Will Martin, what a game, out of that Wildcat. 3 rushing touchdowns. Then on the defensive side of the ball, had 1.5 tackles for loss, an interception, and a pass breakup. I think that pass breakup was in the end zone too, if I remember correctly. So it was a pretty big one. And Seton's defense really stood the test all year. And they've battled through some really tough opponents. Washington, who they played in the semifinals, had the, at the time, best ranked defense in 2A, and Steel Valley was at this point the best ranked defense. It was kind of 1A, 1B. But Seton did it when it mattered, and really shut down Duron Barksdale and Steel Valley's running game. Barksdale had over 100 yards, but kind of like what Ryan Briggs said about some of the other games, he didn't break the big one, right? They kind of kept him in check. He got over 100 yards, but didn't break the big one. And credit to Seton's defense. and they came up with a goal line stand at the end of the first half to keep it 0-0 at halftime. And now they're on to the state semifinals after winning their first WPIAL title since 2004, where they will play Farrell, who we heard a lot about early in the show. On the other half of the bracket, 2 blowouts as Southern Columbia dispatched Steelton High Spire, and Lansdale Catholic took care of a Williams Valley team that might have been in a little bit of turmoil. I think I saw an article about their head coach was kind of on the outs with the school board or something. So
I think that's a half a show if we want to talk about what happens with, and this just didn't happen last week. This happened really weeks ago, that the coach basically was ousted by a bunch of boosters, and just was just he just had enough. And the first time that kind of a winning coach like this gets forced out in the middle of the season, I had never really experienced that or heard of that. But yeah, a lot of turmoil there. That certainly didn't help winning a football game, and they don't have to worry about that anymore. But that Lansdale Catholic Southern Columbia matchup, wow, I think that's just classic state championship football type of matchup.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk Seton Farrell for a minute first. Statistically, these teams are both pretty high scoring, both pretty good defenses. And then we talked a lot about the key players too earlier, so I won't rehash all of them. But Jules Johnson, Farrell's running back, going over 2,000 yards is certainly a huge accomplishment for him. And he's definitely a guy that, Seton's just coming off a game where they slowed down Deron Barksdale, and they're going to have another one they have to figure out how to slow down as well if they're able to do it. The only previous playoff meeting between these two, Farrell actually was in the WPIAL until the mid-90s when they moved to District 10, or mid. Yeah. They met in the WPIAL semifinals in 1980 when Seton was en route to winning a WPIAL championship, but that's their only postseason meeting between these two schools. Farrell does have the more recent experience, having won now 5 straight district titles. They've won district titles in all but one of the last 12 years. So I think Farrell has the experience here, but Seton has been on a mission all year to get back to this point. So we'll see what they're able to do with their experienced and tough defense.
And I think that the key to this game is that Farrell defense that you touched on. I mean, it's just really outstanding. But two high scoring offenses here. And so let's see who imposes their will on their opponent, which is, in a nutshell, always the great question that gets answered in these playoff games.
Yes, absolutely. So now looking at the 2 semifinal matchups, as we said, Farrell's got the experience, especially recently, of being at this level. Seton hasn't been here since the mid-2000s. Southern Columbia, we obviously know everything that they have from an experience standpoint, having been here a lot, seemingly every year except for last year when they got knocked out by Troy. And then for Lansdale, they're kind of also in a similar spot with Seton LaSalle, that they were actually the team that beat Seton LaSalle in the 2004 state champion. Or no, sorry, they didn't beat Seton that year. But they won the 2004 state championship. Seton did win the WPIAL title that year, but did not make it to the state title game. But still, Lansdale and Seton seem very similar to me, right? That they kind of haven't been to this point in a long time, but at the same time, it all comes down to matchups at this point in the year.
And did you ever think that Southern Columbia, we'd ever say that Southern Columbia had been flying under the radar for most of the year, which they did until really a couple of weeks ago when everybody kind of woke up and said, oh, Southern Columbia is like really back in this thing.
I mean, I'm not as in tune with the Eastern media as you are. I've had them at the top of my WPIAL Blitz ranking since about the middle of the season, so they weren't necessarily flying under the radar for me. But you're much more in tune with the eastern part of the state.
but just not really talking about him in the way that they, had been, like basically the lead story of 2A in the state for every single season up until last year. And now this year, really nobody they've had a fine season, but nobody talking about them in the way that they had talked about them, in the past with postseason football. So, yeah, I mean, Coach Roth and Southern Columbia there, a force to be reckoned with once again in the state tournament.
Yes, they are. And we'll see how this one plays out. Moving on to 3A, where Avonworth, for the second year in a row, won the WPIAL title. And this one was all about Avonworth's defense. We've talked about their defense all year. We've also talked a lot about, how good Amani's offense was with all their playmakers. But Avonworth just shut them down. And, 4 interceptions, 6 tackles for loss, 2 pick sixes that they took back to the house. And that really changed the game. A couple pick sixes, one in the first half, one right at the beginning of the third quarter. And Avonworth just ran away with it. They were able to play, for the most part, mistake-free football and just get it done. Luke and Neal, they're kind of all-around back, had over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. Carson Bellinger hooked up with sophomore Jaden Jones for a 37-yard touchdown. Jones also had a pick six on defense. This kid's going to be really good. He's only a sophomore. He doesn't have any D1 offers yet, I don't think, but he's had a couple high-profile visits. Like, he's visited Florida State, he's visited Ohio State, so he's starting to get on the radar. And definitely a name to watch out for, in the coming years for Avonworth. But this Avonworth team just shut down Amani all over the field. They couldn't run, they couldn't throw, and a lot of Amani's yards came late in the game when things were pretty much already sealed up.
I really thought that if anybody could beat Avonworth, forgetting about the WPIAL, if anybody was going to beat Avonworth even before Cumberland Valley, it would have been Amani. I felt that this might have been for the state championship here between these two teams because they were so high quality. And wow, I mean, Avonworth just did everything that they absolutely had to do to win this game, and Amani totally opposite of that. Just really couldn't seem to get anything going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and credit to James Dotson from the Lawrence County Sports Network. When we talked to him last week, he mentioned that Amani takes a lot of penalties, right? They had 150 penalty yards in the semifinals against Central Valley. Now they ran for 400 yards in that game, so the penalty yardage didn't really matter. But against, a team like Avonworth that can just kind of grind the clock out and wear you down, you turn the ball over a few times, you commit a few penalties, and all of a sudden you're up against it. And Amani, like you said, was just never able to get a rhythm going offensively. And all the credit in the world to Avonworth's defense for the way they played all night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, looking at the state playoffs here, we talked a little bit about that Penn-Cambria Sharon game with Professor Briggs earlier on. Northwestern Lehigh, the defending state champs, just dispatched Scranton Prep. And then I think one of the games that was a surprise to me was Trinity going out and beating Newman Goretti out of District 12 in a pretty hard-fought game. I know that's out in your coverage area.
I think Trinity only led for 6 seconds in the game, and it was the last 6 seconds. And they scored. Just an incredible effort by those guys. Pretty familiar with Trinity. We did I broadcast their district championship game against Berks Catholic the week before, and just kudos to that squad putting together a game-winning drive when it meant the most. And the kid, and take it for what it's worth, but they're going to play on the same field in consecutive weeks. I think that that's an enormous advantage for them to go into this game this week, is because they know the routine. Okay. Northwest Lehigh, this, I don't think that they've ever played at Exeter Township High School, but I think that being able to be in that same routine, they're gonna dress in the same, probably in the same locker room and everything else. I think that means a lot in the postseason. And but Northwest Lehigh, boy, I tell you what, it's the team, on a mission again this year with such a convincing win over Scranton Prep. That's going to be a whale of a ball game there. And I believe, yeah, that's Friday night.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yeah, both of these are Friday night, so we'll see how it all shakes out.
And that's surprising too, considering these are Saturday morning games
yeah.
in Cumberland Valley. But
yeah, I was trying to think about that I guess they kind of get an extra day here before the winners have to go out to Cumberland Valley.
Right. And well, and correct. But even with that, talking about that whole thing with Thanksgiving and what have you, they did that, I think, related to the travel with with some of the other classifications. I was a little surprised here, but maybe because because the sites are so close. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is very, very possible. So talking about Avonworth and Penn Cambria, they met last year in a 16-6 game where Avonworth pulled it out thanks to their defense, but it was a hard-fought defensive battle. Both teams with pretty good defenses once again this year. And I think, if Avonworth is able to slow down what Penn Cambria can do out of the backfield, right? Their quarterback Brady Jones had close to 2,000 passing yards, almost 600 rushing yards. That dual threat quarterback plus having a 1,500-yard running back, that if Avonworth's able to slow down their running game and make Brady Jones throw the ball. Now, Blake Lilly's a pretty good receiver who's put up some numbers, but Avonworth had those 4 interceptions last week against Amani Christian too. So I think, Avonworth, if they're able to control this game with their defense, should be the pretty clear favorites. And like I mentioned earlier, Avonworth's starting defense hasn't given up more than 10 points to any team this year. So I think if Penn Cambria is going to win this game, it's going to have to be in a low scoring game. If Avonworth gets into the 20s or 30s, I don't see any way Avonworth loses this game.
And I don't either. And but the other thing is that Avonworth has to kind of put their foot on Penn Cambria's throat, because I think this year Penn Cambria knows what they're kind of getting into, and the longer you let a team hang around, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. Yep, I absolutely know what you mean there. And then we already talked a little bit about the Trinity Northwestern Lehigh game. So I think we're pretty well set there. And not a lot of lengthy history here with these teams, but some recent history, right? Avonworth and Penn Cambria played last year. Northwestern Lehigh has been to the state championship 2 years in a row. They're the defending champions. They're looking to get back for the 3rd time. So I think, this is one where these have been kind of some of the powerhouse teams in recent years.
Yeah. Kind of setting up for a really great game there at Cumberland Valley.
Yep. All right. So on to 4A, where Aliquippa defensively dominated Oil City. Twin Valley ran away from Susquehanna Township. Southern Lehigh pulled it out at the death against Shamokin, and then Cardinal O'Hara beat North Pocono to set up a pretty good set of semifinals here. So I'm going to let you talk for a minute. I got to run something upstairs to my wife who needs something, but I'll just go on mute and I'll let you talk about some of these quarterfinal games that happen, because I know a lot of these are out in your area.
Yeah, I mean, the Southern Lehigh Cardinal O'Hara, I think, is one that just as a classic as far as getting a District 12 team to play one of the District 11 powerhouses. It's the only time really that these teams will take on one another. And Southern Lehigh, though, just a big win over Shamokin last week. And on the flip side there, and Ian will have the matchup there, maybe the most intriguing matchup of this weekend, I think, is Twin Valley, who's the number 1 in the state in 4A, playing Aliquippa. And Twin Valley undefeated on the season there. Obviously key players there. One of them really, Drew Engel, a running back, just a magnificent player, 31 touchdowns on the season. I think that he's the key to Twin Valley, along with their defense, in putting any kind of stranglehold on Aliquippa. It's going to come down to, ball control by Twin Valley. They've never played before. Twin Valley's never been this far before, and it's total opposite when it comes to Aliquippa, with all of the postseason experience that they have. But I guess the X factor for Twin Valley is coaching wise, just enormous experience. Brett Myers led Middletown to 3 consecutive state runner-up finishes at Middletown. Now he's the head coach at Twin Valley, so he's been there, done that, and that type of leadership invaluable to this group. But this is a group of players that, even though they've never made it this far, are battle tested. Lucas Myers is Coach Myers' son and is just a terror on defense. But Aliquippa, I think the key for them, I don't know how they're going to control Drew Engel, because he does it from all angles. I mean, he'll catch a pass and run, and they put him in some really interesting positions on offense to really wreak havoc on a defense.
Yeah, and I think this game comes down to what Coach Warfield talked about last week when we had him on the show from Aliquippa, and it's tackling, right? If Aliquippa's able to go out and execute and tackle, and not have a 5-yard gain turned into a 50-yard gain or a 70-yard touchdown, like that's going to make Twin Valley, have to just keep pounding the ball into the teeth of the defense over and over again. And we'll see how it goes, right? This has been a really good Twin Valley rushing attack all year. 2 kids over 1,000 yards. And they can put it in the air if they need to as well. Aliquippa, their quarterback Marcus Council was injured halfway through the year. Everyone kind of reported that he was out for the year. He came back for the playoffs, led the Quips to the WPIAL championship, where they shut down Kimon Spell from McKeesport. So, this Aliquippa team has seen talented, dynamic running backs before.
And I think physicality is important here too. I think Twin Valley's been able to kind of impose their will on opponents this year with the type of physical brand of football that they play, that I don't think is going to intimidate Aliquippa like maybe it has other teams throughout the year.
Yeah, that's a great point, because as you know from doing the show with me, Aliquippa is not intimidated by anybody. But I think the real question is, are they still, even if they're not intimidated, are they still physically able to dominate up front in the trenches and make those holes for Engel and Myers in the running game? And for Aliquippa, they really haven't been a very high-scoring team all year. Even last week, they put up 28 points against Oil City, but they got a pick 6 right before halftime. Khalil Good picked it off in the end zone and ran it 100 yards back for a touchdown. So, this is an Aliquippa team that has really thrived on their defense, and this is a really, really good Aliquippa defense. So I'm fascinated by this matchup, just to see how the ground and pound smash mouth approach of Twin Valley, the unstoppable force against the immovable object of Aliquippa's defense, and who's able to prevail. Because Aliquippa, man, the way they fly around on defense, it's something to watch. And this one's not at Mansion Park. It's at where is it? It's in Mifflin County. Yeah, it's still in the middle of the state. So I guess kind of about halfway in between both. But another Friday night game where this is going to be a long commute for both of those teams.
Right, and that's the other thing. I was surprised that but look, the game. The championship is what is Thursday night, so they had to play it on they had to play it on Friday. But getting back to Twin Valley, I think when they ended the regular season, they were the second, despite the ground and pound, they were the second highest scoring team in the state of Pennsylvania. So it was it was a ground pound, quick strike, um, and and so that's, I think, the fascinating aspect is who is going to win, who is going to impose their will. Is it the offense of Twin Valley or the defense of Aliquippa? That's why we play the game. I think it's the most fascinating matchup of this week.
Yeah, and from a program tradition standpoint, right? Aliquippa 21 WPIAL championships, 5 state championships. They've done it in recent years. Coach Warfield has done it, and for Twin Valley, it's their first district title. But you mentioned, Coach Myers having the experience of taking Middletown to the state finals. So, I think this is a very interesting kind of schematic matchup too between the program tradition of Aliquippa. Twin Valley is kind of a recent upstart, but you never know. And then on the other side, it's Southern Lehigh, who made it this far last year, which was their first semifinal ever when they lost to Bonner Prendy. Now they got to take on another District 12 team in Cardinal O'Hara. And last week, I know Bob Long, when he was on with us, talked a lot about Cardinal O'Hara's running game and how good that is. But once again, the first state semi for Cardinal O'Hara.
Yeah, and a matchup that really doesn't exist until we get to the state semifinal each year, between District 11 and District 12. I mean, it's very fascinating, and that's why we play the game. There's no dots that connect these two teams, so we got to play it out.
Yes, we will. And yeah, like you said, this is the Thursday 7 o'clock game at Cumberland Valley for the state championship. So it'll be the first night. And then in the 5A championship, we talked with Coach Plack from Peters Township, who won their second WPIAL title in 3 years and second in school history. The Indians were down 19-0 at halftime and really cranked it up on the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned Reston Lehman had a catch for 32 yards, but on the defensive side of the ball was just a terror in the backfield with 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and a pass breakup. And James Spratt, their middle linebacker, with 22 tackles in a WPIAL championship game.
Wow.
Like what a performance, just being a heat-seeking missile out there. And overall, Peters' defense, who had been very good all year, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception, carrying that team to victory. And Cole Newpaver literally carrying them to victory with 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I didn't even mention Nolan DeLucia, their senior quarterback, who's a Villanova commit, hit a really nice go ball down the sideline on a 4th down play to put them in position to score the game-winning touchdown. So they didn't have to throw the ball a lot, but they did it in key spots. And this Peters Township team, they're tough, they're gritty. They've got 2 defensive ends in Reston Lehman and Lucas Shanafelt, who are one's going to Pitt, one's going to Stanford. So both, Power 4 recruits there, and then a Villanova committed quarterback. So this is a team with some talent too, that can, especially on the defensive side of the ball, really put the clamps on people. But they're going to be going up against Bishop McDevitt, who handled business against Solanco in the District 3 championship. And on the other side of the bracket, 2 blowouts with Roman Catholic just routing Hollidaysburg. I think all of Hollidaysburg's points came in the Mercy Rule time. And then Springfield Delco taking care of Chester in the District 1 final.
Yeah, I mean, Bishop McDevitt was actually down 14-7. In the first quarter. Solanco did a good job of running the football, but eventually McDevitt took control, stopped Solanco, predominantly a running team, and McDevitt came alive with some of their stars. The win basically is the equivalent of a team becoming most WPIAL championships all time. Well, Bishop McDevitt became the all-time winningest football program in District 3 history by passing Manheim Central head coach Jeff Wechter. Got his 300th win on the same night, and they played in the same stadium that he started his coaching career and that his dad coached. I mean, the stars were aligned. I mean, divine intervention. I mean, they're just incredible. What happened, and this was a neutral site game, so it was originally picked by the district, really not knowing all of these factors too. I mean, it's just incredible to think about all those things that transpired. I'm going to go out and say hello to Coach Wechter. I mean, I have a tradition personally of going out and going to practice Thanksgiving morning early, and so I couldn't think of a better team to go visit on Thanksgiving morning with a team that's giving thanks to a lot of things like Bishop McDevitt. So I'll be out there Thanksgiving morning with my phone and my microphone, and be talking to Coach Wechter. So but Roman Catholic keeps on rolling. They're just a machine. I mean, that is the only way to describe Roman Catholic right now. Coach Rick Preet and those guys are just incredible. Springfield Delco's been there all year from District 1. I just don't know if they've got enough horses to compete with Roman Catholic, though.
Yeah, and let's not forget Roman Catholic and Bishop McDevitt both made it to the title game last year with McDevitt winning. So I know Bob Long said last week when he was on that this Roman Catholic team has been a team on a mission all season to get back and try and win that state title. So breaking down the Peters Township Bishop McDevitt matchup, I think the thing that stood out to me when looking at them, because statistically they're very similar, but this McDevitt team seems on paper at least a lot more run heavy than they were in the past. Obviously, Stone Saunders last year throwing for over 3,000 yards, but just more based in their running game than in their passing game. Now that they've had to replace a couple of those guys who went on to D1 schools.
All I have to say, the most improved player, maybe in the state of Pennsylvania, from the beginning of the season till the end of the season, is Bishop McDevitt quarterback Sebastian Williams. The guy looked incredible in the pocket on Friday night, and he made a couple of throws that it's like, wow. I mean, between defenders, effortlessly throwing the ball through now he had a nice clean pocket there, but really looks effortless in throwing the football. I think the thing that Peters Township has to watch out for, and I know you said that they're run heavy, they better watch out for the passing game of Bishop McDevitt, because I think that they're ready to unleash the Kraken, so to speak.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
I think that the pass game is one that I think that McDevitt could surprise some people, over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think really if they do take to the air, the X factor is, can those two defensive ends from Peters Township get pressure and get Williams off his spot and make him uncomfortable in the pocket, or can McDevitt's line hold up against Peters' defensive front?
Yeah, I think that that's an absolute key. You're dead straight. Somebody's got to get to the quarterback. They cannot let Sebastian Williams sit in the pocket. That Peters defense has got to get in his face if they expect to win this game.
Yep, and they've got the two D1 commits on the end, and then DeLucia, at quarterback, who's thrown for a bunch of yards. But Cole Newpaver, he was a hockey player, and they just kind of convinced him to come out and play football this year because they needed a running back, and now ran for over 1,400 yards, had 3 touchdowns in the WPIAL championship game, and the kid's just a workhorse. He just keeps grinding and grinding and grinding. And this was a Peters team that lost in the WPIAL finals last year, but I think the thing that stands out to me about them is DeLucia especially has made clutch throws with his arm in key moments throughout the season, and their ability to execute in the clutch. They were down 20-17 against Upper St. Clair in the fourth quarter and came back and won 24-20. Hitting that pass down the sideline on 4th down against Pine Richland to set up the game-winning touchdown. 22 touchdowns is a lot to throw for, but it's not like it's not like throwing for 35, right? Like
Sure.
Stone Saunders did last year. So this is a very balanced Peters Township attack, and they definitely pick their key points to try and throw. And I think if they're able to get things going with New Paver on the ground, I have no idea how their line stacks up against McDevitt's line or McDevitt's linebackers, but if Peters can get the ground game going and keep McDevitt's offense off the field, they definitely have a chance in this one, because this is an outstanding Peters Township defense.
Oh, this is a toss-up game. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly. And I'll be honest with you, I think Peters has played a more difficult schedule. Even though McDevitt is a 5A team, basically playing all 6A opponents, I think that Peters has played a tougher schedule throughout the year. I mean, McDevitt, they're probably their closest, game. Now they did lose, a couple games to like this Clarkson from Canada and what have you, but and to Harrisburg are their two losses. But they did beat State College in State College, and that's a 6A team. But they're playing basically an entire 6A or above schedule as well. But the Mid-Penn Commonwealth was a little bit down this year. So I think Peters maybe played a tougher schedule throughout.
Yeah, and I think worth noting, speaking of McDevitt playing a 6A schedule, that if they make it back to the championship game, they'll have enough of the success points from the formula to actually they might now, because they won the title last year. So I think they might have enough success points to be forced up to 6A. I don't know what the transfer situation is, because it's the success points plus transfers, but I think they might have enough to get forced up to 6A next year if they have enough transfers.
Well, that's that's a little bit tough to handle. I mean, if you recall, I mean, what was it? Just 3 years ago, they won the 4A championship.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna go 4A, 5A, when consecutive go from 4A to win consecutive 5A championships. It was really funny. And I've never seen this before either. So pregame, I'm down and I'm talking to Jeff Wechter on the sidelines, and Jeff's a great guy, I know him pretty well, and we're just talking. He's wearing the two-time state championship sweatshirt. Bishop McDevitt, two-time state championship. It's the first time that I've ever seen a coach on the sideline of a game like wear, like a state championship, sweatshirt. Normally they're wearing, their regular stuff, but he's got his two-time state championship sweatshirt on. I don't know. Maybe it was an intimidation factor. Who knows?
Maybe. All right. And then the other semifinal, we talked about Roman Catholic in the semis for the second time ever. They were the runners-up last year to McDevitt. And then Springfield Delco making their first state semifinal appearance in school history. So McDevitt's got a lot of tradition, a lot of experience being at this point. The other ones are relative newcomers to this stage.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk 6A, where Central Catholic dispatched State College, really just handled them on both sides of the football in that game. Harrisburg battled out Central York. That actually should have been 38-10. That's a typo. LaSalle blew out Easton, although Bob Long did tell us that was a close game into the second quarter before LaSalle stretched it away. And then North Penn pulled it out against Penridge, who Penridge, I believe, was looking for their first ever district championship. So North Penn, who's been to this stage before, getting back. And now we've got a rematch between Harrisburg and Central Catholic. These two met last year. Couple different players on the board here this year than were there last year. But, just looking at them head to head, like very similar statistical teams, even with how many yards their quarterback has thrown for. Central has two running backs that they use. Their top defensive players have similar statistics. So this one, I think, is probably, other than Peters and McDevitt, this is definitely the game of the week in the state.
Yeah, I really think that Harrisburg has really not shown really anything of what they're going to put out on the field against Central Catholic. It's been kind of a revolving door between Michael Shank and Jayon Lewis at quarterback, especially later in the season. Princeton Dent, he's actually the backup to Messiah Mickens, and because Mickens has been hurt a lot of times this year, the backup got 1,261 yards. I think the X factor is Elias Koch. He is a matchup nightmare for anybody in that. But Central Catholic, um, you know, I really think that they played so solidly down the stretch, and they seem to play mistake-free football. On the flip side, Harrisburg seems to have a lot of trouble with penalties and penalty yardage. I think that the team that plays, the most mistake-free football is the one that's going to win this game.
That's a great point about the penalties and the penalty yardage. And I think Central Catholic's been on a mission to get back to the state championship game all year. We've seen it from even going out and scheduling LaSalle in week 0, thinking like, okay, we need to prepare ourselves for an opponent like this in case we see them in the state title game, either LaSalle or St. Joe's or someone, of that ilk. So I think this was a 38-33 game when they played last year. Central's averaging more points per game and holding teams to fewer per game than they were last year. And Harrisburg's a little bit different. They're scoring a little less and giving up a little more. Not that that means a whole lot, because there's some different players. But I think this is going to be another close back and forth game, just like it was last year, where a turnover, a penalty can swing the game. And that Central Catholic defense is so good. Just loaded with talent, especially in the front seven, that if Harrisburg's going to win this game, they're probably going to have to do it through the air against Central secondary. But, with what Ashton Blatt and Colson Gatton have been able to do, Roman Thompson, an inside linebacker, that Angelo Pugliano on the defensive front, he's going to Western Michigan. These guys are just a force on the front seven. And I think it's going to be some tough sledding for Harrisburg, but this has all the makings of another classic, just like last year.
Yeah, and that's why I think that quarterback position is, the lack of, a cohesive starter at quarterback is going to hurt Harrisburg. But I think a key to the game is that last year Harrisburg got down and was coming back the whole time. I think if Harrisburg expects to win the game this year, they've got to score first and play from ahead and rather than from behind. And I think that that's the key to the game. But you're right. I think that Harrisburg is going to have to move the ball through the air, and that's why I think there's going to be a lot more pressure, on the quarterback position for the Cougars.
Yeah, and like we said with the Peters Township McDevitt game, can those Central Catholic defensive ends who are both D1 commits, one's going to Notre Dame, not Notre Dame, one's going to North Carolina, the other one's going to Duke, right? Can the two D1 commits at defensive end, cause problems for Harrisburg's backfield, or can Harrisburg get things out in time and on target to their receivers?
Yeah, and I'm totally convinced that the look that Harrisburg is going to show in the game against Central Catholic, nobody's seen yet this year. I can almost promise you that. So
that's an interesting little bit of gamesmanship there. So, but at this point, we've got Central Catholic actually having the most experience at this stage of any school. LaSalle in the semifinals for the first time since 2009 when they won the state title. They'd kind of been stuck behind St. Joe's Prep for so many years. But this is a LaSalle team, like Bob Long likes to say, that's been on a mission, brought a lot of players back from last year, and they've just, dispatched everyone in their path all the way through the tournament so far. I think they're just too much for North Penn. North Penn's been to this point before, but I think LaSalle is just too much. And then Central Catholic and Harrisburg meeting for the second straight year. So a little bit of familiarity, even though there's some new players. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I just some tremendous matchups. And, Yeah, Harrisburg and Pittsburgh Central Catholic are the usual suspects, in the West. But, having the breath of fresh air on the eastern side of the bracket um, has just, I think, transformed the entire football tournament this year.
Yeah, I mean, someone's going to win who hasn't won in a long time, right? Harrisburg's
Yep.
never won. North Penn hasn't won since 2003. LaSalle hasn't won since 2009, and Central Catholic hasn't won since 2015. So it's been at least 10 years since any one of these four teams won a state title.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
So looking at our breakdown of semifinalists by district now, the WPIAL putting 6 teams in the semifinals. Now, 4 of them were, the WPIAL champions enter at that stage, but still getting all 6 here to this point. District 12 actually getting 5 with Belmont Charter and Lansdale Catholic in 1A and 2A. That's definitely a storyline worth keeping an eye on, that some of these other District 12 teams are starting to rise up a little bit. I was going to ask Bob Long about that. If he was able to join us, maybe we'll
But
have
you're
him on
right.
next
The
week.
only repeat is Roman Catholic. All the others are brand new.
Yep.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah, it does. No one from District 2 or District 9 made it this year, after District 9 put 2 teams in the state finals last year, although those 2 teams or those 2 spots were taken by the District 10 schools that didn't have anyone at this point last year. And then Southern Columbia, the only one from District 4, although they are kind of the powerhouse there. So something that I thought was interesting, I looked at head-to-head records against other districts. So, the WPIAL's got 3 games against District 3 teams: Central Catholic against Harrisburg, Peters against McDevitt, and Aliquippa against Twin Valley. WPIAL teams are 33-17 all time against District 3, 42-11 all time against District 6. That's the Avonworth Penn Cambria matchup. And then 57-24 all time in the state playoffs against District 10, where we've got Seton LaSalle taking on Farrell and Clairton taking on Greenville. I think the one that really stood out to me, though, just because of when District 12 entered, the state tournament, is we had a lot of District 1 teams that were making and winning state titles before the Philadelphia Catholic League joined in 2007.
Yeah.
And after that, District 12 has just dominated District 1 by a 32-4 margin in the state tournament, and really just wiped District 1 off the map from a statewide relevance perspective.
And that's a shame. I mean, obviously, you've got to be the best, you have to beat the best. But, that's what I talked about. I've talked at length about the fact of, with District 1, with the concentration of 6A and 5A teams, that I didn't think that it was quite fair that only one team out of, 32 in each classification made it into the state playoffs, that there couldn't be somehow at the district level where a 6A or a 5A team could go, out west or somewhere else, if you know what I'm saying. That to alleviate that, because there's a lot of good football being played in District 12.
Yeah,
or excuse me, District 1.
Yeah, and I think the tough thing too, and we talk about this all the time, is that some of those District 12 teams have a very wide footprint from where their players come from, right? Like,
Sure.
They're able to pull players, especially the Philadelphia Catholic League. They're not only pulling players from the city of Philadelphia, but they're pulling them from District 1 area. They're pulling them from New Jersey. They're pulling them from Maryland and Delaware and things like that, right? And Kyle McCord, who was the quarterback for Syracuse and Ohio State, won Pennsylvania Player of the Year when he was at St. Joe's Prep and lived in New Jersey. So it's one of those things where those District 12 schools, especially the Philadelphia Catholic League schools, can pull students from a much wider radius, across multiple states, whereas the public school teams in District 1 are basically just like, whoever lives in our district is what we got, right? Mm-hmm. And even some of their players are getting pulled in by the District 12 teams.
Well, all I know is, based on the statistics here, District 3 is kind of the sacrificial lamb in this whole thing. I mean, they're being beaten like a drum from the WPIAL in District 11 in PIAA tournament play. I mean, having a really difficult time of it. And, look, I've called Mansion Park the graveyard of District 3 for a reason. I mean, I mean, it's just really difficult for District 3. And those District 11 losses are mostly at the 4A or below level, not necessarily in 5A and 6A. So
yeah, because usually in 5A and 6A, District 11's on the District 1, District 12 half of the
correct.
bracket.
They're having to go through District 12, a District 12 team, which hasn't happened, I think, since Parkland, maybe. Yeah,
that might be. So yeah, I think you're right about that. So looking at the head-to-heads, I think it's interesting, even though, history has not necessarily a whole lot of bearing on the present, but it's just interesting to see how these, districts have stacked up against each other too.
Yeah, I think it's great. Fascinating.
All right. So if you have stuck with us for almost 2 hours tonight, we thank you very much. And we certainly appreciate everyone who tuned in live or watched us later. If you enjoyed listening to me talk about high school football, you can tune in tomorrow night, Tuesday night, to the Steel City Blitz podcast, where we will
by the way, who did they lose to?
They lost to the Bears.
The Bears, my Bears.
Your Bears.
That are
fun fact, on our season preview show, I actually picked the Bears to make the playoffs. I was the only one on the show who picked them.
Wow.
So I had some faith in your boys, Bruce. But yeah, we will be uttering lots of 4-letter words about the Steelers' performance, so just be prepared. Tomorrow night at 10 o'clock on the Steel City Blitz YouTube channel. We're doing it on Tuesday because Thanksgiving is Thursday. So if you're interested in Steelers football and want to just have a good time, and it's like therapy for us, right? Like, we just kind of get to vent about our anger at the team at this point, but it's fun. It's a good time. Folks can tune in. And then next week, we've got our WPIAL Blitz Fresh Set of Downs, Pennsylvania State Championship edition. So be back here Monday night at 9:30, and we'll break down all 6 state championship matchups. Hopefully we'll have our normal cast and crew together for that one, and should be a good time.
Yeah, it really is. It's the best time of year, getting ready. I just don't know how, like, guys that are coaching still and these teams are even have a semblance of a life. It's got to be all consuming, for those coaches and what have you, and the teams and the families and the schools. And I mean, it's bad enough for us guys who are covering it because we're so immersed in everything that's going on. I couldn't even imagine being a participant.
Yeah, it's a lot, and especially this time of year with Thanksgiving right in the middle of the week. So we'll see how everyone's able to come out and perform this week. Best of luck to all the teams. Enjoy yourselves, have fun, right? This is the state semifinals, but you're all WPIAL champions. You're all champions already. So just go out and enjoy the experience. Bruce, one thing for you, I'd just be curious to know, we can even talk about it next week.
Sure.
Since you mentioned that you're going to see Bishop McDevitt and Coach Wechter on Thanksgiving morning, something I always wonder is, how much scouting of other districts do these coaches do during the season, right? Bishop McDevitt was kind of the presumed favorite in 5A in District 3, right? So, how much is he kind of keeping an eye on what's happening in the WPIAL and who the good teams are, and how much scouting is he doing of those teams, over the last few weeks and also kind of during the season? I'd just be curious to know, because I have no idea from a coach's standpoint, how far they look ahead, if it's just week after week and try and prep for your next opponent, or if they're, kind of taking that longer view of, hey, I think we've got a pretty good team. Maybe we'll, have a staffer start to look into what some of these other teams are doing. So I'd just be curious to know.
I can tell you. I mean, Coach Wechter and I mean, he asks me a lot of questions about the teams. Pregame, he will ask me, hey, how's that team? How's this team? What are they looking like? And so I can only speak for, on some of the conversations that we have, but, he likes to know what's going on, elsewhere. Not meaning to say that, he's that's kind of deviating from, his game planning or concentration or whatever like that. But he always likes to ask my opinion of some of these teams that I've seen so far, just to kind of gauge the landscape, because I think it's remiss for a team that pretty much knows that they're going to be, I think it's short-sightedness if you're not preparing for the long term for either one of those teams. And personally, I can tell you, Coach Wechter's asked me many times, and it's not just this year or last year. I mean, it's really just about every time that we get together and talk before a game. He'll ask me about other teams. So it happens when we get together. I can't say that he's thinking about that every single week. All I can speak from is my own personal experience.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious, so how much future scouting is done at the high school level, because it's a lot harder to find information about teams from other districts if you're not in them, right? If you're in the districts, you kind of know, but if you're not in their district, it can be hard to find information out about them.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the time it's, at least what Coach and I would talk about are teams that are, within the district, not talking about like who do you think that we're going to face in the state semifinal? I mean, that question's not raised.
Yeah.
Okay, he'll ask me a question about a team, and I give him an honest answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, all right, my friend. It is. We almost did make it 2 hours, but it didn't seem that long tonight.
No, it flew by, and next week hopefully we got the whole crew back together with Bob Long and Dave Micah and can give our fans and everyone a pretty good preview of the 6 state championship games. We'll run through them all. Last year there were only a couple WPIAL teams in the state finals, and we still ran through all of them. So we'll be back next Monday night. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Stay safe out there, and enjoy yourselves over the holiday weekend.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ian. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our fans out there. We really appreciate you. Enjoy your turkey, and we'll see you next Monday at 9:30. So